Yep. Just making more shreddy HX35s. So why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you put a, sorry, H1C, but why wouldn't you put a 9cm housing on a 35? They flow a ton, they spool super fast, and now I got the big turbine wheel. It's a win in I think every area. By the way, this is a switch tag, it's not an H1C. If it's an H1C, it would have a V-band cover, and obviously this has a snap ring cover. This is a 67mm compressor wheel setup. Obviously why it's way not the right size. But yeah, that is a bolt-in 9cm housing with the fancy angled gate. And then on top of that, if we need to, we can put a HX40 downpipe flange on the housing, or you just order in a 351 to 40 adapter and clamp it on. Either way, it's the same result, just one less clamp if I weld it on. The big thing that makes these housings so good is this internal gate on an angle. There's a large internal gate, and it was also leaned over with the flow, so the gate efficiency, or the percentage based on size of the gate versus how much exhaust gas it's actually bypassing in mass flow around the housing, is going to be closer to what 100% would be versus a perpendicular gate like what we see on HX35, 12 centimeters, 17 centimeters, 19 centimeters, and the 40s, S300s. The gated housings also have perpendicular gates. So this angled gate is key. You see it on the BorgWarner EFRs, and also the new Garrett stuff everybody's going to this angled internal gate. I know it's nothing new, it's been around for a long time, but as far as OEM applications and also like available to the public for reasonable cost applications, is kind of a newer thing. So, but that's really a big part of what makes this thing good. The next thing is that we have this small housing with a large turbine wheel. The flow triangles look be lining up, obviously, because we're seeing what the column rails are doing with this housing. We've also been running 351 swaps on second gens and first gens for a long time, but the problem with those is the work involved in putting one of those on. It's a new charge pipe, it's a new down pipe, it's command valve plugs. Sometimes it's new even intakes if people aren't going to run a spring gate. So if you run the factory actuator, you have to keep the compressor orientation fixed, which can make the intakes kind of a pain in the butt as far as the air intake to the turbocharger. So now that you can put this on a 35, it just makes it a lot easier. Sorry for all the ums. It's late. I'm working on these things. So that's something I've been working on for a long time, as far as you hop in a stock truck and it just runs so good as far as the response of the turbocharger, the cleanliness out the exhaust, how quickly it gets up to boost and can maintain a boost pressure without getting wild with the throttle input, which is fuel delivery on a diesel. So I wanted more boost pressure with not so much less drive, but I wanted drive to match boost or stay relatively close, plus or minus, at all operating RPMs up to the sonic or maximum flow values for a particular setup. With these guys, we're seeing the sonic flow or the choke flow or the maximum mass flow with a 5.9 liter engine is right around 2,700 to 3,000 RPMs, which is stellar if you look at machined 12 centimeters in your 68 millimeter S300s, they're reaching that point right around 2,500 RPMs. If you look at a stock turbocharger, on the Cummins applications at least, where you're seeing those points at 1,800 to 1,900 RPMs. So we wanted the response of a stock system, but I wanted the choke values to be quite a bit farther up. That way the motor is breathing at a higher RPM. What the turbocharger is multiplying density wise is going to be better because the motor on its own is pulling in more air. All the way around, just a much better driving turbocharger than what I've been able to offer, as well as what other people offer. So that's a big deal to me, at least, because I enjoy diesel performance as much as I think anybody does. It drives me crazy when things aren't as good as I feel like they should be. So, yeah, I don't know. These things are freaking cool. Should be able to break drive shafts, break U-joints, break transmission parts. Should be fun. They make a crap ton of torque and also have a crap ton of horsepower potential, depending on what size compressor you put in there. You know, this also allows a lot more compressor options for the 1G and 2G guys. Look at like the smallest I'd run is obviously the 55, or which is, if you want to call it smaller based on flow, the 12 valve 8-blade wheel actually has a lower flow capacity but a little bit higher pressure ratio capability than the late model 7-blade 55 millimeter wheel. The 55 millimeter wheel has a higher flow capacity but doesn't like to quite run the pressure ratios that the 8-blade does. From there, you got your HX40 wheels, 58 all the way up to the 60 mil. If you're gonna run a cast 60 mil, find yourself a junk 351. Those are great wheels, flow 70 pounds a minute. We verified it on our own dyno that we can get the engine to consume 70 pounds a minute on a stock cast compressor wheel. Obviously the 60 mil 351. It's a more modern design than the HX40. As far as the profiles, they're the same, but the pitches and shape of the wheel is actually different. The weights of the wheel are a little bit different. From there, the 351s are kind of a real pain in the butt to put a 62 in. So from the 60, we go to the 67, but for these, we can go cast 60, billet 60, billet 62, and billet 67, making them easier to tailor for people that are above the flow capacities of the OE cast wheels or need to run high pressure ratios because they have a limited RPM window. If you can't rev the motor really high, then we can't multiply. You can't run a low density multiplication ratio, which is low boost pressure, because it doesn't matter how magical a turbocharger is. It ain't just, the motor's not going to consume a whole lot of pounds minute of air. So when the RPM requirement is low and the displacement isn't the greatest, then boost pressure comes in and saves the day. So boost pressure is a good thing. Don't let people tell you that it's just a measure of restriction. It's actually a little bit different when you're talking about measuring it on a motor. It's a density measurement based on temperature and pressure. Obviously, if it's 1,000 degrees out of the compressor outlet temp, but 100 pounds of boost, the density ratio is going to be garbage. But if it's a 600 degrees out of the compressor housing at 100 pounds of boost, and we got an air to water, and we cool that thing down to 100 degrees, well, now the density ratio looks pretty dang badass. So you can do all the math for all that stuff. It's not too hard. Just sit down with a pad of paper and a pen. You can calculate all this stuff out. This is what if you're running a common rail injection system, your common rail ECM is calculating all this stuff in real time. I've had some friends of mine with common rails who do truck polling, send me data logs, and you can see the ECM calculating all this stuff real time based on the MAF sensor, the boost pressure, air temp. Some stuff has air temp before the turbocharger, but most just have air temp at the plenum, and then it knows engine's RPM, and it knows engine's theoretical efficiency based on a factory mapping that's already been installed from the factory on the ECM, and then it uses these to figure out how much fuel to inject. That's what you're toying with EFI Live, is you're messing with the air to fuel based on all these different factors that are involved in there to make all this cool horsepower. Don't ever spin turbos like this. This is a mock-up charger. I don't care what the bearings look like. It's just, it gets heated up a lot. It's used for fitting and machining housings and making crazy cool stuff like this. Well, I don't know, I can talk way too much. Hopefully this is at least a little bit interesting. Notice for me, this is something I've been trying to do for a long time. Oh, it's finally getting somewhere on it. Everybody wants a turbocharger that spools like stock and supports ungodly amounts of power, and finally getting somewhere with it. Turbochargers I'd like to look into is the EFRs from Borg Warner. They look like a really good charger. Just don't know anybody locally with one on a diesel. Power driven, played with them. They actually did 500 horsepower and 1,500 foot-pounds of torque at, I want to say 1,500, 1,600 RPMs in a compound setup with one of those on the manifold, which is pretty nuts. So obviously the responsiveness as well as the high flow efficiency is there in the Borg Warner EFR stuff. They're just kind of pricey to try. One blows up, or it doesn't work. It gets real annoying really fast. Now, hopefully this was interesting. Everybody has a good day. See ya.